Boom! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan. Really excited to be talking to you guys about deplatforming and follower counts. This is a pressing topic that's going on right now across the online internet sphere. Who am I? What is Simulation? For those that are new, Simulation is a thought-provoking, multidisciplinary show that features some of the greatest minds of our time in long-form, nuance-driven conversation. You can find all these different interviews on our channel. And also, I care a lot about maximizing civilizational prosperity. That's my thing. Taking out all of the structural violences that are going on within our frameworks and resource flows to enable people to be their best. So that's who I am. That's what we are for all you newbies. All right, let's talk about this. Deplatforming and follower accounts. I have a really cool notes to show you guys. All right, so one of the things that comes to mind initially is algorithms. It seems to be like the most pressing thing, is knowing who is deciding on the code that is making the decisions. So, for example, how does one even get discovered? How does a video get discovered? How does Instagram decide who to put in the feed for the individual that's viewing the feed? And how do these things actually work? When you like it or comment it, do they stay more frequently in your feed, etc.? And so how do these things work? And why are we not being extremely transparent with them? More so than anything else, the sort of the way that we behave with these internet protocols should be transparent so that we know how the algorithms work. We know how we behave with them. We know how to align them and tweak them and tune them so that we can do things like we'll talk about at the end, enable us to find more aspiring artists and entrepreneurs around the world and help them maximize to their fullest potential. So what are these algorithms in all of their nuance and all of their complexity, and who even gets to decide on who, the different platforms right now, the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, etc., that's deciding who to give their platform to or not, who's being deplatformed in all of these across all these platforms is extremely interesting and important, because a lot of the times, I'll talk about this in a moment, these sometimes conspiracy theorists like fucking Copernicus, again, most people don't realize that Copernicus was against 99.9% of people, saying that the Earth is not the center of the universe and that the Earth orbits the star and the star doesn't orbit Earth. And so, again, it's things like this that sometimes conspiracy theorists are right. I'll get to that in more detail. But who is to say that we get to choose to ban certain people from our platform or not? And there are some publicly, we'll talk about this in a moment, but these sort of biases that occur for who to deplatform, the biases that occur to express what shows up in people's feeds. There's algorithms that parse videos before they go up, and that they say that this video is going to be demonetized, things like that. All right. So let's give these examples of it's a really hard job, right? I'll explain why it's a really hard job. So sometimes people will literally post videos to the internet of them chopping someone else's head off across the world. So when things like that happen, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's hard as a content delivery network, as a social platform, that you have to make sure that, oh my God, okay, well, we don't want kids to see it as potentially okay to chop other people's heads off, but at the same time, it's important for people to know that that's going on around the world so we can globally move forward and try and fix that issue. So how do you decide on which one of those is okay and how much of it to actually allow and where to allow it, how to move and organize this? And maybe that's what certain organizations are for, is to go and eradicate those issues in order for other people to potentially not be traumatically impacted by them. And there are tons of other examples like this. Here's another one that I have. Someone publicly expresses their suicidal thoughts and we send them help. But if the video is deemed unsafe for others to watch, how can we learn from this experience best? So take an example like someone's literally going and saying that, I'm hurting, I want to hurt myself. And if we don't let that video go on the internet, then we don't even know that that's happening, potentially someone could go and help them without that video going on the internet. And maybe that's right. But what if someone else is feeling that way and then they go and hurt themselves because they've never seen anyone else talk about it? So there's all this different nuance and variability to unpack when it comes to knowing which videos to actually display on the internet versus which ones to take off, and what are the reasons for it? What are we learning from these processes? And how can we, again, learn from these sort of experiences the best possible way? So, okay, now on to Copernicus. I love this segment here because conspiracy theorists are actually occasionally right. There is a lot of pressure from greed and corruption to shut down conspiracy theorists because they don't want us to know the truth. And so when you have conspiracy theorists that say that over and over again something, and they try and program it into culture, even though it might be wrong, that can be harmful. It can be harmful when they're going off and maybe 99% of the things they say are wrong. That can be kind of harmful at times, because if only 1% of the time they're right, is it that worth it? It's crazy to even try and calculate that. Now, if you take into account conspiracy theorists that maybe only speaks when they have done a tremendous amount of research on something, and that they can say something with an extreme level of confidence and they're right more often, then they can gain credibility. But what if these platforms are shutting down these theorists? So that's extremely makes me hesitate, because it's like these are the platforms that give people voices, and that they need to be heard because there's so many pressing things going on in the world, so many variables. People don't like being called out on their shit. People don't like being called out on their greed or their corruption or their malevolence and their violence. So that when people get called out on that, they get hurt, and that's not okay to shut down people that are calling them out on those things. So, all right, decentralization may help in all of this. So how do we move forward with properly figuring out how to give platforms to things that may scare us or may make us feel uncomfortable or may challenge the government? How do we give these platforms? How do we give them these platforms that enable them to speak, to make civilization better, even though they may challenge some of the authoritarian states? There is so much Big Brother-esque stuff going on right now. It's so scary in many ways. The authoritarian states, is everything going to be completely transparent and oversight? Who knows what's going to be the best solution? It does not seem like that's the best solution. It seems like some sort of peace and prosperity and total collective progress is the best. We don't know how to get there yet, but I love talking about figuring out how to get there. And so, again, super important to figure out how to give voices to people that are trying to figure out how to maximize the potential of truth in the world and the potential of collective coherence here. All right. On we go to who's real and who's not. These bots, these are very, very crazy. Follower counts are a lot like bank accounts being published on people's t-shirts. So that's an interesting analogy, and I find it to be somewhat true that it's important for a couple of reasons, because when you land on someone's page and you see that they have a certain amount of followers, that means that they have at least been around for a certain amount of time. They've at least built up an audience somehow. So people actually do, in fact, see that they've done some sort of work on their account. They've done some sort of work in bringing value to other people. That's why they've built up their followership. But how many of their followers are actually real followers versus bots? And how do we even make the right algorithms to go and parse and figure out how many are bots and how many are not? And how do we eradicate bots? Do we eradicate bots? What are bots even doing on the internet, etc.? Soon we already have social androids. So what about when you see social androids walking around on the streets? How do you figure out if they're real, if they're a human, or if they're a robot? What does that even mean? This is coming in the next couple of decades, so we have to be extremely, extremely vigilant about how to best ethically move forward on these things. So you can tell when someone's worked hard on their profile and brought lots of people value, but at the same time, how many of those users are actually real users? All right. And then YouTube, for example, this is kind of interesting. YouTube lets you actually hide your subscriber counts, which is interesting. Twitter doesn't allow you, Instagram doesn't allow you, etc. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen with that idea. Is what would happen if we hid subscriber accounts, because it definitely, and follower accounts, because it definitely affects the psychology, and I'll explain this in a moment. You want to know how popular people are, but you don't want it to bias you. So for example, let's take a look at this. If you see a post that has only one retweet versus 100 retweets, would you say that you're psychologically you have a higher tendency to want to retweet when there's more retweets, or like when there's more likes, or comment when there's more comments? Well, the idea is yes, or watch a video when there's more views. And so now what happens when you are, when the numbers aren't shown? Well, what if the retweet count or the like count or the subscriber count, etc., is not shown, or the view count's not shown? How many more people are more likely to watch that video? This gets really nuanced and difficult to figure out. So I want to come full circle on these concepts. Let's come full circle with our screen. So how do we make it so that more people can publish content questioning the current paradigms and inquiring for truth? Obviously, it's extremely important to make sure that we're not amplifying malevolence and badness on the internet, but that we're continuing to give a voice to people that are in the Copernicus realm, that are seeking truth. How do the major platforms decide who to show in recommended feeds, with what agenda and bias is going on in these algorithms? And how can we be transparent with these algorithms? We're about to be with more push for decentralization, which is exciting, because I would like to know how to make it so that young artists and entrepreneurs that should be getting discovered actually get discovered in Africa and South America and Asia, in Europe and US, everywhere across the world. How do we actually get the young and aspirational and super smart entrepreneurs and artists discovered? How can we make our algorithms focus on cool things like that? Or how do we make our algorithms focus on people that need the mental health assistance? How do we make our algorithms focus on the things that make us more human, that get us to more in-person, eye-to-eye scenarios with people that we find that can maximize our potential and flourishing in the world? And how do our biases change when we see follower, sub, like counts? So this has been a session with you and I on the subject of deplatforming follower and follower counts. It's been a lot of fun, everyone. I appreciate you tuning in. There's a lot of nuance and multivariability here, and it's important for us to actually talk about what the transition's going to be in the next couple of years with social media. It's a big land grab. Gary Vee talks about it like a land grab. I love that way of phrasing it. There's a huge land grab. It's like the gold rush right now for the attention economy is going on. The attention economy gold rush. That's an interesting one. I haven't heard it put that way before. And so that's what's going on. So the more and more people are going and trying to grab people's attention and stuff. So this is extremely important, knowing how to work with follower accounts and how issues like deplatforming are going on, finding those Copernicus people, these great artists and entrepreneurs. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you. Much love, much love. Give us your thoughts in the comments below on what you think are the best solutions moving forward. Also, give us your thoughts with just how you can execute your future and build the future and manifest your destiny into the world. Join our public Telegram and talk to us about it. Talk to us about these nuance-driven conversations, these thought-provoking questions. We talk about it all the time in that chat. Also, yeah, tune in more, and much love to you all. And we will see you soon. Go and have these thought-provoking questions with other people. Much love, and peace.